episode is brought to you by the Consultancy Growth Network. As you'll know, I'm a big believer in learning from people who've achieved the things that you want to. It's why I run this podcast, to share the stories of consulting leaders and how they've got to where they are today. So when I started talking to Mark Jansen and the team at Consultancy Growth Network, it was clear there was an obvious fit between Climate Consulting and their mission and what they are building with their network. But you're probably asking, what is the Consultancy Growth Network? The Consultancy Growth Network is the leading community of boutique consulting leaders. It brings together seasoned consulting growth experts who successfully scaled their own boutiques, with rapidly growing consulting founders looking to emulate their success. Now, you might be thinking, who are these growth experts? What do they actually know about consulting? And this is one of the most exciting things that personally I find about the network. The team at the Consultancy Growth Network have searched far and wide for some of the best boutique consulting leaders to help their members on their journeys, some of which I have previously interviewed for this podcast, such as Don Morehouse and Augusto Negrillo. But it's not just the insights from these people that you will benefit from. By joining, you get access to their jam-packed calendar of regular in-person and online events, their comprehensive growth hub of resources, and their active Slack community. Through all of these channels, you can learn, solve challenges, and achieve the goals you want for your firm. And now, if that wasn't enough reason to sign up, the Consultancy Growth Network is giving all listeners to this podcast a special sign-up offer. If you join for 12 months, you join for that next year, you will get your 13th month for free, giving you that extra month to continue to build on everything you're learning and continue to benefit from the network. To sign up, just visit consultancygrowthnetwork.com or contact their partnerships director, Luke at consultancygrowthnetwork.com. And when you're talking about joining, mention Create Engage or Climate Consulting, and you will get that special sign-up offer. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Climate Consulting. In this one, I am joined by Chris Tomlinson, or Tommo, as most people know him, Managing Director of Muuto Consulting and a seasoned transformation leader with over 2 decades of experience helping businesses change for the better. In this one, we go into one of the topics that a lot of people are talking about, but very few people actually have a deep understanding on: AI. And this is something that Tommo has gone super deep on with Muuto and with their clients. And it's something that he is even studying at Oxford University to help bring that knowledge to his firm and their clients. And so it was fascinating to sit down with him and hear all about his perspective on how AI has, is, and could change our industry for the better, what you should be thinking about if you are leading or working in a boutique, and the changes that this new world is bringing to the entire consulting industry from the big four down. There is tons in this one, whether you are leading a consultancy, whether you are an AI enthusiast and interested to learn more, or you are just looking at where will the consulting market go and how can you position yourself and your career to make the most from it. So with all of the intro shared, all of the build-up done, all that is left to say is please enjoy today's conversation with Tommo. Tommo, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Well, thank you for having me to your office, and I'm looking forward to this as probably the person who has done the most genuine education on AI that I know. You are going to, I think, share a lot of interesting perspectives, and I haven't talked, I don't think, with anyone about AI yet, Tommo, so I'm looking forward to chatting about it. But for those who don't know you, it'd be great just to get a brief overview so that they can place you in terms of who you are and how you got to where you are today.
I'll do the quick version. So yeah, Chris Tomlinson, but everybody knows me as Tommo, which all the Brits thinks I'm professional, but anybody that's European or Australian, they're fine with it. So yeah, do call me Tommo. I started my career actually straight out of school, so I didn't go to university directly. I actually joined the Navy. So I was in the Navy for a brief spell before I realised it was hard work and low pay, and then did go to university and then started my consulting career at Accenture. So I was shut in the basement for 5 weeks and taught VB and UML and all the stuff that I knew I would never use. Did a spell there, spelled at a couple other different consulting firms, actually was a transformation director at a law company for a couple of years. Moved down to Australia, did some stuff down there at PwC Consulting, and then moved in-house again, worked at Shell for a couple of years as an internal consultant. and ran some bigger restructuring programs there, and then left, set up Muuto, and the rest, as they say, is history. So I think probably started growing the practice properly about 6 or 7 years ago now. And yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Fantastic intro, Tommo. And if we have time, I'd love to come back to the Navy, because it's not something I think I've got to talk to many people about. I wanted to touch a little bit on Muuto, and then I do want to talk all about AI and the future of consulting, because I know that's something you're super passionate about. I guess I was originally going to ask around what led you to launch Muuto, but you just sort of teased it there around, you really started putting energy into what it is now. I think, did you say 7, 8 years ago?
6 or 7,
6 or 7 years ago. What caused that?
I think inbound demand. So I kind of knew I was good at what I do as a practitioner. And then, you have clients that leave or move on or change roles, and they say, do you know someone? Could you help with it? And all of a sudden that kind of snowballs into, actually, there's more need here than I can service. So therefore, a few subcontractors, a few friends, a few people from Accenture Start Group. And the next thing you know, you've got a band of very merry men and women. And you then have to put the structure and the corporate stuff around it sufficient to run it as a going concern. So yeah, it's been demand led initially. And then we started to drive it as a real business since then.
Obviously, that was demand-led. I'm conscious if you'd been running that, because I think as a firm, it's been going for about 16 years. Is that right?
With a couple of breaks in between, so yeah.
And that shift from, let's say, that kind of contractor or small firm to where you are today, and just roughly for our listeners, how many people are you right now, or revenue, whichever number is easier?
We're probably about 30 odd deployed, I think, at the moment, combination of perms and associates, and we've been up as high as 55-ish, something like that, I think, in different peaks and troughs, different programs.
Wow. So that's quite a jump from just you. I guess, how did you learn what you needed to scale to that point? And how did you decide you wanted to? Because when you're working on your own, you make a good living, you get low stress, and you've suddenly, you have no people to manage. Now, in some way, shape or form, you've got 30 plus. How did you learn what you needed to, or decide that this was the time to make that change?
I mean, I say it was all demand led. I think there was probably an inkling that, maybe I could do something one day. And all of a sudden, there was an opportunity to do it. So I think if you could sit back on it, or you can lean in. And I think I very much kind of leaned in. It was in the back of my mind. So that, I think, it just gave us the opportunity to expand. How do you decide what you need? How do you know what you need to run a consulting business? I mean, essentially, they're not that complicated. And when you've worked in big consulting and you've seen the essentials of, pipeline management and hiring and performance management and client service, yeah, you can cut out a lot of the stuff that's, big company bullshit and then do the fun stuff, essentially. So yeah, you need a sufficient level of structure, I think, to run these kind of smaller operations. We just need good people and good clients, really.
I like the simplicity, and we will come on to the future of the industry momentarily. So I'm sure there is something about the lack of big company bullshit in the future. And it's kind of linked, because I remember when we spoke ahead of this, you mentioned that one of the big things that you recommend to people starting consultancies is ignoring the doubters. And there are a lot of people who, when you were building, sort of questioned what you were doing, why you were doing it. I'd be interested on what those conversations were in terms of who was it? Was it friends, family? Was it colleagues? And I guess, how did you ignore, and how would you advise others to ignore?
Yeah, I mean, doubters might be overstating it a little bit. I think a lot of my friends, a lot of my social group, early career, were all in consulting, because, they sort of take you away and build a cult around it, and, the Accentures and the Big Four. So I think people are grown up in a certain environment and they're kind of indoctrinated, but you see the big brand, you see the big machine. I mean, that being part of that is really important to the effectiveness of those people as consultants for that organization. And I think consultants and lawyers, I think, interesting, maybe a lot of people in professional services are quite often conscientious overachievers, and they kind of not necessarily entrepreneurs. So actually doing a really good job, getting the next promotion milestone, being in the system is almost more important than doing something different or innovative or, slightly risky. So I never saw it as a big risk. And also because I hadn't worked in consulting my entire career, being in-house, which I think is a really important part of kind of client value delivery, or at least that's our position, point of view on it is, yeah, it's not that scary when you are on the outside and you try something different. And I think that opportunity to experiment career-wise is another thing that doesn't feel that scary to start a consulting company or be in one.
Yeah, well, and I say I know we've got some big topics today, so I don't want to spend too long. But there is an interesting piece to your career journey. It sounds like you have tried a number of things, and there is something in your origin story of going into the Navy and leaving, which probably, and you can tell me, set you up, was a perceived failure that didn't cause a lot of harm that set you up later. And I talk more from my personal experience, but you're right, consultants never fail, and that creates a risk aversion, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bit that. Well, I mean, I had joined the Navy signing up until I was 55 or something. So it was, definitely a much shorter stint than was planned. And the only person that really thought I'd failed was my dad, who said, "A final salary pension? How can you give that up?" I mean, I was 19 or something at the time, so it didn't really add up in my mind. Call it career experimentation. That's $2,000 when you're 19. But for me, I kind of get bored really easily, which is why I actually worked at a company called Schlumberger for a while before I got into consulting proper. I was looking for something that gave me a career with variety and interest and change on a regular basis. I'm a change junkie, really, and consulting is that career. So it took me a few goes to find out what it was, and it's taken me several consulting companies to realize that actually I prefer, running my own consulting company with colleagues that can kind of look at a variety of interesting client problems and throw their brains and their energy at it. That's kind of, the dream job for me. So yeah, I don't know if it was trying and failing. It was just really looking for my personal path. And then I think where inquisitive consultants are the best consultants, I think. So yeah, I've got an inquisitive streak, I think, nosy streak.
Well, I think to that, it takes us nicely to that future of the industry. Because as I say, I know from our previous chats, this is an area you feel quite strongly about. And just before this, we were talking about the shifts in the industry. And I guess maybe to start this, what would you say is the typical view, and how would you say your view of where our industry is going is different?
Yeah, I mean, if you read the consulting commentary bubble, which obviously I do, you do, the business model's broken and the big four are struggling and consulting is going to get taken over by AI, which I fundamentally don't agree with. However, it is evolving. Client needs are evolving. Client preference is evolving. This is all client-led. The range of alternatives to a set of consultants coming in to deliver a project is much bigger. So it's evolving at quite a rate, I think. But where it's going and whether or not it's fundamentally broken or it can evolve or it will look different, nobody knows yet. It's an interesting time to be in it. It's a challenging time to be running a consulting company trying to adapt to it, but it's definitely shifting.
And what are those big shifts that you're seeing, or what are those other models that you're finding are starting to, you're starting to think about or are keeping you up at night, or you are seeing others start to be concerned about? Because like you say, we're both in the echo chamber, and sometimes that's good. So, sometimes you get some other perspectives, sometimes you get the same perspective.
I mean, I still think there's a big say-do gap between outcome-based commercials. So being able to, as a consulting supplier, take a risk on the outcomes that you're going to deliver with your client, that's really challenging. Whether it's procurement, whether it's convention, whether it's control, all those things I think are challenging. So you end up back at time and materials quite a lot, which again, if you're trying to move from a people-based professional service to one that is enabled by technology, AI, models, IP, where you kind of have to question the value of the input metric, that's quite a hard one to manage with clients that have maybe bought services for decades in a certain way. So I think that's one that's very uncertain at the moment, and nobody knows the answer yet. And for the work that we do, again, it's a very hard one to change the commercials on. So I think that drives behaviors. So yeah, that's an area of innovation for sure in the sector, which you have to see how it plays out.
And just because it might guide me for the questions, are there any other main ones that you're seeing from your client chats or from what you're speaking to others in the market about?
Yeah, we've always operated in it's one of the kind of behaviors that we hold dear is collaboration and integration with client, with other consulting firms. So for us, it's all about focusing on the client value outcome. And if that means you work cheek by jowl with your competitor because that's the right thing with your client, do that. So I think that's a very different operating style. And I'm seeing that probably more in the smaller mid-size consulting companies. Bigger ones tend to be more, they tend to pitch for bigger pieces of work, maybe have, a larger team on the ground. But if we're running or involved in a multi-work stream, multi-year, multi-geography transformation program, there's a lot of resource mobilized in those sort of programs. So that ability to collaborate with others is really important. I think knowledge transfer is an explicit requirement a lot, and increasingly actually something that people are more receptive to. I think a lot of organizations...
From consultancy to clients.
To client, yeah. I think it's always been a request, but been rarely actually met with real demand on the client side. But a lot of organizations are very lean. Like they're running an operation, they don't have spare capacity. That's why they need, external support for delivering, bigger change programs. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that we're seeing more opportunity. And it's a good opportunity. Like we enjoy doing that, but I think it's actually something there's a lot more space and engagements for that sort of stuff now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's some interesting ones because, like you say, they kind of, we take them in order, but if we start at outcome based, that seems to be the nirvana for consultancies. I guess, like you say, it's the unfortunate joke in ours is it's not always the easiest to tell what that is. If you've taken your client's watch to tell them the time, how do you quantify that? Now, there are some who can do that. If you're doing process improvement, you can have a spreadsheet. But if you're implementing a system, I worked on a project that was still going 5 years after it started, and I think maybe finished at some point. Like how do you qualify that? And is that also a different conversation by size? So is it easier for smaller firms? Is it easier for larger firms? How do you see that?
Well, I think the control is the thing usually. So from a commercial point of view, have we as a supplier got control of the outcomes? Rarely. Absolutely. So, I haven't seen this cracked anywhere. There's a few engagements I was on in a former life where I'd seen a component of outcome-based, input-based and discretionary. And I think that's quite an interesting model as well. But again, for the size and scale that we're on in some of these bigger programs, we're a very small team. We might be 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 might be it'd be a very big team for us. So again, the scope of delivery, a lot of it is in coordination of others, working through others, working through the line and the client as well. So it's a very involved process for us.
And then maybe the partnership one's probably one we can dig into a bit more then, because I know that's something you've done quite a lot of. I know we know some of the same firms who you do work with. Like, how do you approach that? Because you're right, traditionally our industry hasn't shared a lot. It's getting better. I mean, it's why I started this podcast. There's now thankfully lots of podcasts in our space. And yeah, that's just at the one end, but actually the sharing IP, sharing knowledge, building proposals together. How are you seeing that side of our industry change? And I guess, is that all boutiques coming together, to build something the equivalent of a Big Four? Is that actually the Big Four coming in to get that expertise? Is it an or, is it an and? How are you seeing that shape out, and how are you doing that?
I mean, I think it's the access to information these days, is the democratization of the consulting models. You stick it into an LLM now, tell me how to do a reorg, you'll get a pretty good view of it. Now that on paper is fine. And actually, we work with and after a lot of the bigger strategy houses. So they'll do corporate strategy, they maybe do operating model, idea generation. The turning that into execution, that needs at the moment a real practitioner experience. So, everybody knows people by people and all that stuff. The trust that whether it's our firm or another firm can help deliver the paper-based solution. That's, that comes with, it's got to come from your credibility, from your credentials, from your experience. And I think that's the bit at the moment where there is real value in people who are experts in a certain area. And for us, it's running big transformation programs. But you can get the basics of the methodology from pretty much anywhere. And I think it would be arrogant of any consultant firm anywhere to say that you can't. It's in the corpus. It's on the internet, so you can get it.
You can Google it. Or now we probably the Googling it has been replaced by ChatGPT.
I don't know what the verb is yet.
I tend to use just chat singular. Chat has become a noun as much as a verb. And there's an interesting question then to kind of make it practical. If someone's thinking, how do I do this? Is that something then that's driven client or firm? So is it the client saying we need someone to make this come to life now the strategy house has gone, or is it consulting firms finding those partners where 1 + 1 is greater than 2?
Good question. I think there's probably some broad buckets. I think there is especially in the current cycle or mini cycle of wherever we are in the economy, that there's a cost sensitivity to it. So you usually start out with some heavy hitting consultants at a very high rate, but actually these bigger programs, bigger changes take a longer period of time, and you burn a lot early on, and you'll burn even more over a longer period of time. So I think there's something about an affordability, a fit for, and it's a different muscle. And I think having organizations don't always know what they need if they haven't done that kind of change before. So again, it's a lot of it's down to trust, credibility in your space, relationship. We can't service all the opportunities that are out there, but neither do we find them or get involved in them, if you know what I mean. There's loads of transformations you never hear about, and once they've been announced or been completed, I would have loved to work on that one. I think I could have made a real impact. So yeah, you've got to be in the right conversations. There's also something that we've reflected on as we try and grow the pipeline of opportunities is we're actually quite a time-based service. So I could have a conversation with a client a week ago and not speak to them for 6 months. And in the middle, they've gone through the decision cycle to kick something off. And unless we've had the conversation in the middle, we've missed the opportunity to help them, to support them, to guide them, to be involved in it, because it's very much a point in time service that we provide as well. So yeah, I think that adds another layer of complexity into how we sort of run the business and find the opportunities to deliver.
If you are enjoying this episode so far, I have one small ask. I would massively appreciate if you could open your phone right now, hit share, and send this to someone in your network, one of your friends, one of your colleagues, one of your clients who you think would benefit from this interview. This podcast only runs because of you and because of the value you get from it. And it means so much to me to broaden that reach so we can help more consultants to climb in consulting. So please hit that share, send it to a friend, and I'm really excited to hear what they think too. Obviously, there's a kind of, some of that is marketing, which we probably won't touch on today, but there's also a keeping your ear to the ground side. How do you cultivate that network? And is there, in that future of consulting, a needing to be seen alongside the right firms? You know, is it, if I'm in this club with this consortium, that's better than this club with this consortium? Do you see that's where it's going? And within that, how do you keep those conversations such that you might not be in the room, but consultancy X might be, so they bring you in?
We treat our networking with partner organizations the same way as we treat our networking with, client organizations. They're kind of all part of the collaboration tapestry, if you will. So we have those conversations, and where it's worked well in the past for clients, and then therefore for us with other partners, is somebody will have the relationship, they will see the opportunity, the need on the client side, and then it's a choice of finding the right expertise from the right partners that can deliver client value. So whether we're the truck and they're the trailer, or vice versa, and it's worked in different ways, again, it's about finding a right fit for the consulting partners that you work with. And it's usually because you've got complementary skills or knowledge or experience. We've just finished a big program of work with the petrochemicals company, rolling out a safety transformation. Now, we've done some of that before from a program management point of view, a change management point of view, kind of the life cycle of a transformation program. But we don't have health and safety expertise or, process safety expertise. So we worked with partners to deliver that from a content point of view. The client doesn't mind how people get paid or what entity they work in. They care about the outcomes. So yeah, I think that, again, that approach, I think, is really, effective in our client engagement. And I think that's what drives the value from the partnerships as well.
Where do you see then there's a lot of the future for big versus small? If someone's listening to this thinking, I might start my own consultancy, but is this actually going to be how the big four take everything over? Is this actually the great opportunity? Sort of what do you see as that part of the future? Is the industry moving to consortiums of consortiums, or is this actually back to that consolidator? We're going to buy 20 practices and make them one.
It depends if you're long on professional services being a human resource-based business, or you believe that there's a different way of leveraging the expertise. So, there'll be evolutions of this undoubtedly over the next couple of decades. Nobody knows. I don't know. I don't have a particularly strong point of view on it, if I'm honest. I do think the opportunity to scale and probably codify IP methodologies and approaches with AI is a huge enabler for consulting companies and therefore for their clients. I think that does challenge bigger organizations with a bigger pyramid, where it is, quite a lot of it is, wage arbitrage for some of the bigger players, and the different services, different models, different workforces. But there's a level of disruption in there, but they can be pretty nimble when they want to be, from my experience.
Well, why don't we go there? And these might then, as they sound like they are, Tommo, intersect and kind of weave together. Because I think, to your point, it's hard to talk about the future of consulting without talking about AI. And I loved what you said there about whether you're long on consulting being a human resource business. Maybe we start there, because I love the phrase. I think I know what it means, but I don't want to put words into your mouth. what does being long on it being a human resource business mean? And I'm inferring you're short. So why are you short?
I'm not necessarily short. I just don't think it's the scaling constraint that maybe that it used to be. So we, and whether you use boutique or niche or small or specialist, whatever the euphemism is, we've generally worked with almost an inverted pyramid or almost like a diamond shaped organization from an experience, career, tenure point of view. So we have more people with more experience. Almost all of them have worked both in consulting and in-house, which we think is a real differentiator from a value delivery point of view. And generally, on average, I think they'd be all right with you saying this, most of them are a bit older than your average consultancy if you looked at the demographics. So the ability to leverage that career and client engagement experience with AI agents, AI tools, we've got people who maybe are great in their content space, not that hot on the PowerPoint deliverables. Which one would you rather have? Content every day. But now there's tool sets that can cover some of that. So I think it's a really good leverage point for us without having to add incremental headcount, which means we can scale faster for delivery without carrying the overhead of a bigger workforce as well. So I think it's a real opportunity that we can adopt in smaller firms straight away, whereas actually in a bigger company, and as I say, they'll move pretty quickly. But if you've got a large pyramid in a bigger organization where you are selling bodies, and that's how your incentives for every salesperson in the organization is built on how big your team is, it's a very hard thing to deconstruct as your operating model needs to change.
Yeah, because there is an interesting question around the commercials and how you price in a world where it is not all T&M, but it is also not a soft SaaS or a monthly subscription service as we know it. We'll probably get there. I might start, though, with you've done a lot of thinking about AI. You're currently studying. It's a master's, I believe, that you're currently studying.
It's a graduate diploma, but yes, I think I could say I've got a master's at the end of it. If I finish it, if I do my pre-reader, which I'm behind on, as I was as an undergraduate.
Well, sure. I mean, is there not a huge irony in an AI course? Is the idea not to do the best AI dissertation you can? Surely the lack of reading is passing the test, Tommo. It's the failures who read everything.
There are a lot of rules on what I can submit and what I can use to support me in it. So I don't want to get the wrong side of the law.
Are you allowed to use Notebook LM to summarize it all into podcasts to listen to? That's the question.
All of that. I mean, it's literally like going into a press conference. Everybody's got microphones on their desks and chains around their necks. So yeah, we're being recorded everywhere.
I love that. Well, and I know the answer might be obvious from what you just talked about, but I would be interested what's led you to go so deep so quickly into AI, because everyone's using it, everyone's talking about it. And so one of the reasons I haven't had anyone on yet to talk about it is a bit like we had with data, we had with crypto. There's a lot of people who claim to be experts. I don't know many people who are actually studying it at business school and or using it significantly in their firm. So maybe we start with the why, and then let's go on to the what and how, because you teased some ideas like PowerPoint, and I'm sure there's many consultants who would love to get rid of PowerPoint. Why, out of all the things you could have done for your business, you go, I'm going to go so deep on this, I'm going to devote my time to the graduate diploma. What was it about AI for you?
I would say it's a really exciting time professionally for me, or I see it as an exciting time. I'm genuinely find this as a disruptive force for good in terms of client delivery, but the learning curve is really steep. So I think everybody is coming from a relatively low level of understanding. I definitely was, and like I said, I kind of almost railed against learning VB 20 years ago. Whereas now I'm really leaning in on understanding the fundamentals of the technology, the logic, the maths, the everything that I don't have in my academic background, because understanding that helps me be better with my clients and look at the opportunities for them and for us. So I think it's just generally, again, I'm a nosy person and I'm finding this really fascinating, and I'm getting more and more nosy about it all the time. So we've then applied that internally. So it's, I wouldn't say mandatory, but it's not going away because I'm not letting it go away. And people are sort of going, oh, Tom, I'll get bored of it soon. But no, now we're sort of, and we flipped, like the whole team is now kind of fully engaged on this. People have got a subscription, but they can spend that on whatever tools they want. What we didn't want to do, and I think this is, one of the things we've talked to a few clients about, they go, yeah, we're embracing AI because we've rolled out Copilot with Microsoft. Well, it's a piece of it. But for us, we didn't want to say, well, here's the tool you use. We wanted people to go and find out what the use cases are where they find the most value. So anybody can spend their money on anything as long as they feed back to the team. So when we've got all the usual policies on data protection, et cetera, and how you use client data, which we obviously don't in the external models, but they can go and experiment with it. And we're learning so much from that about what works, what doesn't work, and getting up the curve, basically.
Wow. I realize this might be your secret sauce, Tommo. So if you say, no, Nick, I'm not going to tell you, I respect that. Your team has tested some, and I love the approach. So we'll talk about that as well. But what are so far, everyone knows the chat GPTs of this world. What are the things that you have found have had the kind of the biggest ahas, the biggest impact on your team from all of these experiments so far?
I think everybody is underwhelmed initially. And that's, I think, the point where a lot of people lose interest and drift back to their old way of working. What I think has been the biggest aha for everybody in the team is you look at something 1 week, come back 2 weeks later, and it's fundamentally different, better, more capable. So I think it's the continual experimentation and going back to see how things are improving. So, and we've got an innovation channel in the team. I mean, it probably has more traffic than anything else. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure there's more goes on in there. When at midnight somebody's, I found this and I've cracked it, and the sharing I think is really helpful. I don't know if we've got a silver bullet on any of this stuff. What we are working on at the moment is with a couple of different partners is how we can put together workflows using agents or using LLMs and using our IP and our experience to do things that would have taken several weeks. We can do them in half an hour now to 90% accuracy. And if we don't like it or we want to change it, we do it again. So it's your ability to move quickly with a relatively high level of confidence in the quality of the outcome that just means you can spend more time with your clients. You can spend more time with more clients. You can have deeper conversations. Because the human side of things is our biggest opportunity for this change. So yeah, I mean, you set me off on one already, but I just see more opportunities than I see downsides at the moment.
No, I love it. And I think that implementation's a fascinating piece because, like you said, lots of organizations are experimenting less experimenting, more, as you say, here's Copilot, here's ChatGPT. I guess I was interested, you said you found some processes where you can use it to enhance, because there does seem to be at the moment and again, I'm no expert here, so you can lead me in the land of the blind, is people are experimenting for point things and, it gimmicks. So you can do some stuff with it and you can make some gimmicky things like those little dolls that everyone seems to have. But actually, how are you using it from a process perspective? Because to your point, that seems to be, if it's driving that level of efficiency, what are the areas you've started to or experimented with using it in internal processes?
I mean, internally, we use it a lot for meetings. So we do use Copilot internally. So you get the transcripts, you get the recordings. So it means asynchronous work means, and we're a virtual organization essentially. So people are working remotely in different places. You don't have to always be in the meeting if you're not a decision maker, which is just helps from a diary point of view. We are currently looking at, much of it is driven by where we think we can do better work with clients. The internal stuff, yes, we use it internally, but we're not a big lumbering, inefficient organization. It's not like our accounts payable process takes 60 days. We're a lean operation from that point of view, which I think, again, is the benefit of being a small firm. So we're looking at things where, if you did operating model option generation or detailed organization design, it could take you in a 100,000 person organization, it could take you 6 to 10 weeks to do detailed org design across that sort of population. We think you can do that in a couple of weeks, including validation, QA, etc. So,
again, this might be a secret sauce thing, but how do you do how? Because I guess there's someone listening to this could be thinking they have a secret way of doing it. The other side could be thinking he just make me an operating model into ChatGPT,
yeah.
And you take out the M dashes. And it's now your work. Like, where have you struck that balance? I'm sure it's not just ChatGPT, but how do you do that?
Well, again, it's. I'm trying not to
I
get
appreciate
into
the secret sauce. But
No. I'm just trying not to get into the AI detail of it or the kind of model detail. But
go. I love a bit of detail. Tom. Well, go as detailed as you want.
You're an old-fashioned consultant like me. There's a process flow, and of the steps in the process flow, some of them can be automated, some of them can be agentic, so they'll work on their own behalf. But it's processing data that would take a human or a spreadsheet or a BI dashboard a lot longer to do, and you're getting the output really quickly. So for us, it's a combination of client data, so proprietary inputs for the client. And this is work in progress. It's not like we've got a product sitting on the shelf. We're having, some really good co-create conversations with clients. Proprietary client data, our proprietary IP, as proprietary as any methodology is these days, and then running that as a process with checkpoints and QA and having the human in the loop. So you bring the expertise, but you're doing it on almost a quality assurance advisory basis rather than as a busy work basis to, we're not spending time on doing the analysis. We're spending on time on interpreting the analysis and providing the conclusions and the recommendations.
I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds simple, Tommo. I guess how do you then, because there is
it's no harder than consulting's ever been. It's just a way of doing some of it faster or some of it more automated. So it's just consulting, but with a different tool set.
Well, and I think it's a great point, and it does. I regularly think about a client who we worked with, who they started their consulting career many, many, many years ago. They're in their 60s now. And I remember them talking about doing research at the British Library. And to you, I guess that's the interesting, how much is this is this generation's Excel, before when I believe people used to do Excel on paper before Excel existed.
They used to do PowerPoint on transparencies with
the overhead.
The overhead projector. Yeah,
I remember the overhead projectors, but it was singing hymns at primary school, so it's a slightly different generation.
I remember a dark time in my academic career when somebody did an econometrics equation on one of those, and it took about 45 minutes and 5 or 6 transparencies. So.
But I guess that's the thing, and this might link to your human. The human part is still key. Is like AI can do things quicker, better in certain circumstances. How much is it? It's a new way, as you said, to be able to do the lower value stuff quicker, so you as consultants can keep the higher value stuff versus the, you read some articles and it's like everyone will be replaced in 5 years' time or 3 years' time. Where do you see it? Is it that tool, or is it that kind of we're all going to be out of jobs?
Yeah, well, I think the two biggest unknowns are what's the path from here in terms of development of the technology, and number 2, how long is it going to take? For me, I'm more a when, not if, but I don't know if actually it's going to take a little bit longer than people think. And I think the biggest constraint is not actually going to be the technology. If we just adopted everything that had been developed now, it would take us, a decade or 2, and it would still transform the way we work across organizations. So I think a lot of it is going to be enabled or constrained by the human take up of it. You can go whole Luddite history lesson on this stuff, but actually there will be a drop off initially, and then the uptick will come further behind. So yeah, there's an opportunity for early adopters, I think, but are people too early? I do think one of the bits that we're not seeing yet, but our hypothesis is the kind of transformation we would do over the next 5 years, maybe up to 10 years, a lot of it will be operating model and organization change driven by a more AI and agentic enabled organization. So, and that's not different from restructuring into shared services or offshoring or outsourcing or whatever the operating model changes du jour. But I think that's the one where we'll do a lot more work in the medium term, and that's regardless of how big the take up is on some of these tools or how quick the take up is. There will be changes, but that's not different consulting. It's just a slightly different application of a different technology that's disrupting organizations.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting way. It always makes me, that kind of change always makes me think of call centers, because like you say, it kind of went from onshore to offshore, and then back to onshore, and then back to near shore, which
a lot of these choices driven by consulting companies. Let's not get into that one.
Exactly. But I think your point's interesting. Like, we're already seeing, and I don't say this as an expert. I call my bank, and my bank is now a lovely AI lady who asks me questions, which is helpful. But like you say, that kind of, is it just the same consulting with a different tool set? I guess there is a question, to your point, that bifurcation of small firms or those firms where you can control what everyone's doing versus a big, your clients. Like if you're trying to roll out AI to 100,000 people in an organization, I mean, that comes with a whole load of questions, concerns, risks, giving everyone the power to synthesize everything in the company. Probably high reward, but also high risk. So something to treat carefully, I would imagine.
It depends. I mean,
the
risk. I think that a lot of people lean into the risk and the Armageddon scenario when they're talking about this AI. Terminator's going to take over.
I'm a big believer, Tommo. We will say it today on the 23rd of April. The Terminators are coming, and when we are in our slave camp, they will. You can give me that beer from your rations.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't. I don't think the risks are that much greater in an organization than the current organizational data risks are in terms of protocols and where it can go. It depends on the judgment of the people applying it. Nobody's going to implement a CEO bot tomorrow that's going to make unfettered decisions about an organization. It's going to evolve over a period of time. So I don't see it as a big risk in the same way, I don't see an ERP implementation where people were moving pieces of paper around to do accounts payable before. An ERP implementation is not a massive risk. It's just it's an efficiency and a quality improvement drive, I think. So that's kind of where I'm at, but I would say that, wouldn't I?
Well, I guess does it add more variation for consideration? And what I mean by that is, if currently, you can get automation tools off the shelf, robotics. I mean, 5 years ago, robotics was what AI is now, and most robotics companies now just call themselves AI. But it was really decision tree. It was like, does this accounts payable go to this person or that person? Now that agentic approach means there is just more variables, which means a bigger decision tree, or it's not as simple as a decision tree, but there's more choices. Does that create more complexity in that transformation? Because there's more opportunity for error.
I think it's just another tool for the trade. It's just another efficiency driver to my mind. And I think the bit that is interesting about AI take up, adoption, use at the moment in organizations is, in the short term, probably makes you slower because you are on a learning curve. You are doing things differently. You are kind of probably running your old processes, your personal old processes. And we're talking about the individual level here in parallel with an AI enabled one. But there is a tipping point when you kind of change your workflow, your personal workflow. And for me, it's like we're at that stage in the bigger populations where people are going from 0 to 1. And then, nobody knows what an agentic marketing agency or consulting company or accounts payable department looks like yet. Although actually a lot of these, business process areas, they've been using, machine learning, business process, optimization for many years now. So it's not revolution in some of those areas. It's a natural evolution, I think.
If you are listening to this because you want to improve your consultancy or your practice area or just your career, then I want to give you something that will help you supercharge that on top of this, focused on marketing. If you go to our website, createengage.co.uk/insights, you can download our super detailed ROI-driven strategy framework ebook. In that, we go into detail on exactly what you need to do to build an effective marketing strategy, to build a strategy that will deliver you ROI and help you achieve your growth goals. So take that link, download it, and enjoy that after the end of this episode. A slightly different question is, obviously you're doing this course. What's been the biggest takeaway that has given so far? Because that's presumably at the forefront of the education on AI. What is the biggest aha or that's come from that?
It's very interesting when you start speaking to the academics and the experts on it, because it's not a new thing. It's just that the OpenAI's launch has brought it into the common vernacular, and the access and the signups are ridiculous over weekends. So I think it's the fact that people are now more exposed to it. The multimodality of it, I think, is very interesting because people, if you were doing airbrushing before, and now you're generating it from an LLM. The interesting stuff when you speak to the academics is it's not a new thing. It's just a newly recognized and popularized thing. So access to LLMs and the tools has just shot up recently, but machine learning as a discipline has been around for decades. So that's, where a lot of this starts from, is just a lot of mathematics and programming types have been doing this stuff for many, many years. So I think once you start to understand the evolution of it and how relatively slow it's been and how much it's accelerated, that I think is really interesting. It's very interesting doing a course where it's a very diverse cohort. So we've got central bankers and crypto people and medics and venture capitalists and, all the different, flavors of careers in there.
But that's interesting in itself, actually. I might just spend a minute, what is that mix? Because if you'd asked me, Tom, I would have expected it to be full of consultants looking to sell the stuff. So it's interesting that there's a mix. Are there broad themes in the people, and are there broad themes in their rationale for being there?
There's a lot of just inquisitiveness in that group, I think. Some people are writing policy for central government in certain countries, so they're genuinely to work out how is country X going to think through its approach to data, privacy, AI, etc. When you do speak to people about the different use cases they've got in their organizations, these are people who have drunk the Kool-Aid, as the Americans would. So they all kind of get that it's going to be transformational in their area, but they're still trying to work out how and what information do they need in order to influence their stakeholders. So I'd say the common theme is they are people who are trying to educate others, whether they're consultants or medics or people in government, etc. They're trying to have a more holistic view about the technology, the risks, the opportunities, the complementarity, in order to influence their stakeholders. And so they're all in. They're long on AI, this group, unsurprisingly, but they're trying to help to educate others, I would say, is a overriding thing.
That's fascinating. And you are right. Calling consultants educators is a much nicer phrase than calling them salespeople. So I do like that. And there is that interesting question around, we touched on it earlier, around the kind of the commercial model in a world of AI. And I don't know if this is something that's been touched on in the course or something you were experimenting with or talking about internally, is in a world where you're used to T&M and, it's very easy to say, well, data analysis takes 10 days. And so that's X £1,000. In a world where AI does the thing, actually, how are you seeing those commercial conversations, if they are changing yet, start to change? Or what is the kind of the narrative in that course? Like, how do you price something where you're still delivering the same value, but it may take you less time, or it may take you different time?
Fundamentally, nobody knows how it plays out. Nobody's cracked it. So I'd be absolutely lying if I said we've got a strong point of view of this or a solution for it. I think rather than just looking at it from the consulting lens, if you look at where the value but also the cost is from an AI value chain point of view, at the moment, the biggest value and cost is the models, the data, the compute capacity. The relatively low, in the value chain, you've also got to look at the apps. Everybody's putting a wrap around an LLM at the moment, and services. Now, they're relatively low value at the moment. But if you think about it over the medium and the long term, compute costs are going to drop considerably. The models are going to become much more available. The data is going to be much more prevalent or synthesized, etc. Actually, the value comes in the apps and the services. My hypothesis after looking at this. So again, that's why I'm kind of long on consulting in support of this, because I think that how you move from current way of operating to future way of operating is a service, and whether that's implementing the technology or helping the organization change, combination of or other, I think that's going to be really interesting. The charging models for AI at the moment, the commercial models, there's a big range. Some of them are doing it on the token base, which is really where the cost unit for the AI generation. Some of them are doing it on the outcomes. There's a big range of those, but they're all very much driven around apps and the Salesforces of the world and the SaaS products, etc. So it doesn't really translate into the services side of things at the moment. He says maybe it does eventually. I don't know.
Well, it does create an interesting question, doesn't it? To that point of what we talked about earlier, that someone still needs to implement the operating model. There can be a piece of work that leaves a PowerPoint, but a PowerPoint in and of itself doesn't do anything. And it's funny, we were talking about exercise earlier, and there's a great quote. It's a Derek Sivers quote, if you're familiar with him. If not, I will send you some of his stuff. But it was, if information was the answer, we'd all be millionaires with six packs. And, it's the idea that I could go online now and get a six pack in 6 weeks. But if I don't then go to the gym, do the diets and all of that stuff, it fails. And I guess that's to your point earlier of how different is it? Are the tools at the moment, is it more focused on the information rather than the execution? Like, I could ask ChatGPT how to make an operating model, but if I don't have people to then navigate the complexity of my 100,000 person organization, as of yet, the AI can't do that.
Yeah, and the change is going to be felt by, constrained by, and impacting the people involved in it. So if you're going to change somebody's job, there are regulatory contract conventions around how you treat those people in most developed economies anyway. So you have to go through a proper process around that. So just because you got AI doesn't mean you're going to get rid of everybody in your organization overnight. There's some reality about how you want to reskill, retrain, the culture of the place, the behaviors, etc. the relationships they might have with customers, suppliers, etc. So there's more to it than just putting in the technology, which I get to your point is that is the richness of changing organizations and doing transformation programs.
And where do you see that long term? If you look at, I remember we were talking ahead of this, you talked about being a sort of a means for enterprise re-engineering. How does this, if we look 5-10 years in the future, is this same people doing higher value things? Is this less people because the agents are doing it? Is it somewhere in between? And does it also change? I know I bifurcated the kind of big org versus small, but within that, you've got everything from 10 people to 100,000 people. Actually, does it change at different levels as well? And I know that's a big question, Tommo.
I mean, fundamentally, nobody knows. I mean, this is what is both exciting and a little bit scary when you're a practitioner in it is nobody knows how this plays out. To earlier point, over what time period. So as I say, I think it'll end up being longer. I actually think the take up, an interesting conversation with a friend the other day. She's a speech therapist. We had a family barbecue, and we were chatting about the course I'm on, stuff at work, how her business is going. And she said, no, there's absolutely no way we can use AI in our business. She's got maybe 4 or 5 speech therapists, and they do assessments for kids with special needs as well. And then we broke it down, and I said, what about this? What about assessments? What about write-ups? What about this? She was like, by the end of it, she was like, and I can use it here, and I can use it there, and I can see that being efficiency, because it had gone from not knowing to actually understanding how she could make a bigger and better. It was a multiplier for her capability and her impact with her clients. And if you start to think about it like that, I think it's a different way of engaging it. You can adopt that faster in a smaller firm than you can in a bigger organization where everybody wants stability in their process and their delivery in big organizations. You want it to be predictable. Actually, that makes it harder to unfreeze, to change things. Whereas if you're in a small firm, you can actually adopt things much more quickly.
Yeah, well, I think too, there is that knowing what it can do opens up some of those doors, those avenues. I don't know. You're a Copilot user? You're a ChatGPT user, or
do you chat? Probably 12 different things.
Do you? So I only ask because of your speech. Like, I find myself quite often chatting to chat on my dog walks, which I don't know if I'll get ridiculed for sharing, but actually that voice element, because that's also the other shift, is the ability of voice. Voice has always been a bit. You had it on your Alexa to turn it down, but. Yeah, just in that instance as well, the idea that speech therapy with a voice from ChatGPT. I mean, Tommo, we could take this into a whole different. Maybe we knock on the doors of all the businesses down here and ask them. They come in and we can Shark Tank and improve their business. I guess then, I know we touched a little bit on it, but it would be good to go in the weeds. I like getting practical. Like, if someone's listening, thinking, I want to do some of this for my consultancy, Tommo, like. It sounds like to an extent your model works because there's someone who knows a bit about it. So if I said to a team, go and experiment, there could be a bit of analysis paralysis, or just paralysis. Like, where do I start? How would you advise someone if they're listening to this? Let's say they're the same size as yourself, so 30 to 50. What are those steps someone should do to start getting those foundations? Because it sounds like it's working for you.
It's putting us on the learning curve. We're not behind, let's put it that way. And I think a lot of it is down to the role modeling. I think if you've got senior people, team leads, you've got people who are showing what the art of the possible is and sharing that, it starts to build its own momentum. If you've got people who are leaders who nobody's going to follow somebody, or you use AI and then they write their own emails. There's something about the role modeling of it that I think is really important, which we've adopted, which I think is a challenge in a lot of the organizations that we're working with, where I mean, this is a dilemma on where this goes here, which we're seeing in conversations. We're having conversations with people in the business about how we can apply it to their needs in their business or function. They often, organizationally and individually, see this as an IT department thing. Now, different in different organizations, but actually it kind of splits. It falls somewhere on that continuum between business and IT, if it's a continuum. And depending on the organizational construct, i.e. IT is either an enabler or it's a gatekeeper, or the business is an enabler or a gatekeeper. So it's just interesting to see that dynamic. But this is very much has to be grounded in business adoption, the business value. And it's different from traditional IT, I think. But organizations are usually built around a traditional IT department, finance department, etc. So yeah, how that plays out and where IT fits in the business. Maybe it disbands and you've got, network and, the traditional hardware stuff, but everything else just gets dispersed into the businesses. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I think it's going to get much more aligned to the business.
Well, there's an interesting question. I do want to come back to the thread we had around consultancies, but just because you touched it, around role modeling. And this in a boutique consultancy, the answer is fairly easy, so I don't ask it. But in a client-side organization, if I am the head of a department, is there a moral hazard risk? If I'm already busy, everyone's 100% super busy. If I start telling people I'm using ChatGPT to write my emails, there is everything from I'll just get more on my plate to someone will say, well, why are we employing you? And how do you? Because it doesn't so much if in a boutique people want that efficiency, and I know client-side orgs do, but have you had that challenge with clients, and how do they navigate it? Because that moral hazard must be a kind of implicit or explicit blocker.
There's a lot of research on this, actually.
Hit me with it.
Well, because all the researchers are in universities, so there's a lot of testing university students. And actually, there's a very interesting study with, I think it's BCG as the consultancy, and they're looking at how much better a consultant's output is using an LLM, with some training, or doing it the old-fashioned way, he says, without the use of tools. And LLM with training wins from a quality point of view, and that's a control group peer-reviewed piece of research. There's other interesting stuff around gender. So men are more likely to use it than women are. And also there's a cross-cultural thing. People in the UK versus the States versus other cultures are, to your point, more likely to be secretive about its use in their day-to-day than actually being explicit in the use. So it's like people feel like it's cheating. So when you get it, as in, you go, I've cracked this, people feel like it's a superpower, but it's not. It's just helping them to do the job that they could do faster. There's also something about closing the gap between high and low performers. So it actually has a better impact on low performer performance than it does on making high performers even higher performing, if that makes sense. So yeah, a lot of academics around this. And again, every time they issue a paper, it's 9 months out of date. So, the technology is moving much faster than the understanding of the application of the technology.
It's fascinating. And there is then an interesting question to make it back to our listeners around that role modeling. And this may sound like a silly question, but how do you role model that? Like, do you put at the bottom of your emails, like, P.S., this was written by ChatGPT? Do you vocally tell people that you use it to write emails? Like, how do you role model in a world where some of it is not 100%, like, it's not designed to be shown it's ChatGPT, for instance?
Well, yeah, you have to ask the team how effective my role modeling is. It probably comes across as a lot of nagging initially. So, but it's not just me. It's kind of a contagion across the team now. So everybody's doing it, and I think there is a tipping point on that. But I mean, personally, I will still ask when I see a proposal or a summary or a piece of presentation work. I'll say, "Have you run this through a model? Have you checked this? What was missing?" I spoke to one of the guys the other day who's trying to do. He's like trying to get better at the sales part of his job. I said, "Have you asked an LLM to coach you on your last call transcript?" He said, "No, I haven't actually." So now he's like using it. So it's having an awareness of the opportunities and then just probing on it, and all of a sudden people start to use it. That's how I've approached it. But yeah, it's kind of an expectation now across the team that people will use it. We've got people now building proprietary GPTs for us to do proposal writing or certain bits of leadership development training. We're actually building this as a leave behind with a client, so that there's a Muuto consultant on tap, an AI Muuto consultant. So yeah, these are the things that are interesting and novel and fun at the moment, but they will be commercial at some point soon.
Well, there's that commercial piece is interesting. We work with a lot of clients where they varying degrees of productization. We have one client where they have an AI product. It's saving clients hundreds of hours in procurement. We have other clients who they're kind of testing it. Do you and do the academics see that is the future services and products, or is it the product becomes the value add? To your point on the GPT, how much can you productize something that might get consumed into Chat GPT in 3 months' time?
I mean, we've developed tool sets, be they AI driven or pre-Chat GPT tool sets. And every week we had to check ourselves and say, is it worth investing in this? Or do we think the next release of whichever model is going to do it for us? And we're still of the mind every time we have that test is the nicheness of the use cases the specialization of our expertise and the sort of specific client need as something that's not general, as in, general models? The answer is still yes, it's worth doing. And I think that's probably where we'll remain, actually, in most of this. For us, we have no interest, no value in becoming a product company. We need to work out where are other products. It's like collaborating with other consulting companies. Where there are products that can support us to do better client work, then, we'll use them. I think everybody ends up becoming like not a reseller of models, but they should have a tool set of things that they use, AI models and workflows and agents, to make them better at the work they do with their clients from a consulting point of view. Again, I might be completely out of date in 5 years' time, but that's kind of a way forward, I see.
Tommo, we've covered a lot of ground on AI. I'm almost fascinated after this to take the transcript, put it into Google LM, and see if we prefer the guy and the girl
version of us.
Exactly. Well, that out of all that I know we haven't gone into the weeds on tooling, but that is the scariest one for me at the moment. It's probably the only one where if I didn't know they weren't, if someone gave me that podcast from Notebook LM cold, I would think they were real people.
We need to listen to the Joe Rogan podcast interview with Steve Jobs, which if you didn't know he was dead, you would think he was on a podcast with Joe Rogan. It is neither Joe Rogan nor Steve Jobs, obviously.
Wow. It's and there is a whole conversation around, telling truth from lie and, fact from fiction. And I always come back to, if this is what we have for 20 quid, imagine what the military have for their budgets. But again, that's in my, people are probably already thinking I have a tinfoil hat. So I'll leave that be. I guess we have covered a ton of ground on AI, and I'm conscious of time. I know we're recording this in the workday, so I want to come to my last sort of wrap-up questions. But before I do, I guess, is there anything we haven't covered on AI? Any last messages for anyone thinking of implementing it, looking at how they can use it, looking at how others are using it, sort of anything at all on that before we round off the AI piece?
Yeah, we're finding it just a really exciting kind of collaboration time. So the amount of conversations I have with not just with clients, but with suppliers, with other consultancies, other consultants, individuals, independents. So if anybody's interested in trying something, experimenting things, co-creating things, they can get in touch with me pretty easily. So I'd be happy to chat.
Amazing. Well, after this, remind me to put you in touch with our client who's doing a lot of this in the procurement space, because I think you'd have a great chat. Last questions then, Tommo. And the first one I'm going to change a little, because it's usually about books. It's what book has had the biggest impact on you or you've gifted the most. But I feel I should add LLM into that. What is that book or podcast or YouTube, or as I say, profound question you've asked an LLM that's had the biggest impact on you, or why?
But let's do the mashup, I guess. So 2 books around AI that I'm recommending a lot at the moment. It's compulsory reading for the team. One is by a professor called Ethan Mollick from the States. It's called Co-Intelligence, and it's about AI with humans in the loop. That's really interesting. I think you'd enjoy that one. And there's another one that's recently out from Reid Hoffman, the tin guy. It's called Super Agency. It's a kind of a positive view on what could go right with AI adoption. Really,
LinkedIn's views is about the thing that has gone right with the amount of people posting on AI.
Yeah, done very well. It's also promoting Microsoft services quite well, I think, as well.
Amazing. 2 fantastic books. And yeah, for someone who's studying this, I will take both of those recommendations, because like you say, you've got more.
I'll add another consulting one, because if you cross this over, Patrick Lencioni wrote a book called Getting Naked, I think it's called, and it's about how to consult. So just to do the work with clients is a really good kind of bit of a metaphor, but a bit of a playbook for kind of our kind of consulting, I think. So it's worth reading.
Yeah, well, I do love a Patrick. I always love a Patrick Lencioni. I've read a couple, and there's something around the kind of business story that just lands.
He tells a good story.
He does, doesn't it? And maybe again, I'm overshowing that some may think it's sad listening to a fictional story about businesses, but I sometimes find that the best stories always have power. It's the best way to bring it in. I might put all of those books into ChatGPT and make my podcast afterwards. And then we should talk about Suno and how to make songs, but you might have already done that one. I realize you are the expert here. I'm just,
It sounds like I've got a lot of time just to goof around online. I really am much busier than it sounds.
That's not what you meant to say, Tommo. You meant to say that you've got loads of time because of AI. The next question, and this will be a fascinating one, is about advice. And this is that you've got three people in front of you. And to use Accenture parlance, to where you sort of start your consulting career, one's that analyst come in, I don't know what they teach them now. Is it still, I was due to go to Florida before I went to Baringa. I don't know if they still go to Florida. So that's where they are, that graduate just about to fly out. You've got one who's at manager level and one who's approaching partner or, looking to launch their own firm. And what piece of advice would you give to each of those people?
We talked about this a little bit before. I think when I was analyst, we had an evening drinks with one of the partners and somebody asked the question, how do you make partner? And his advice was hang around longer than anybody else, which maybe is not the right answer. I think as an analyst, mine was just throw yourself into stuff, which I'm assuming is a fairly regular response. When you asked that question, I had so many opportunities to do things with clients. I think I got very lucky in the client work that I was in, but just have a go at things and find what interests you, because you'll be a better consultant in something that you're interested and fascinated by. I think that was what the young me would have appreciated, I think.
And we'll go through all three, but I'm fascinated. How does that change in the world of AI?
I think leaning on that as well. I think if you know more than the people that are more senior than you in the organization, it'll probably hold you back in the short term because they'll feel threatened, but it'll really help you in the longer term. So yeah, try and get ahead of what you're learning in the day-to-day, I would say, around that.
Love it. And then for that manager and for that person approaching partner, how about for those two?
Well, I would say the manager level, the choice is probably stay in consulting or go client side, which I think is a big choice at that sort of career level before you get too indoctrinated and institutionalized. So I think that's a big choice at manager level. Do you really want to keep going in consulting, or do you want to do the real job? So I think that one's interesting. At the partner level or approaching partner, and this is a consideration when we do hiring, it's very different being a partner from a risk point of view, from an exposure point of view, personal exposure, and ultimately is around the commercialization of things. So it's wanting the title and wanting to be more senior. Every layer is just another box of stress that you open up. So I think you should go into it eyes open would be my advice.
I've had a previous guest say they were given the advice that it's a burger eating competition where the prize is more burgers. So I like that. It's another box of stress that you add on to your burgers, Tommo. I do like that. Well, and then the very last one, you kind of touched on it earlier for anyone who's testing or doing things in AI for collaboration. But if anyone listening to this wants to find out more about you, find out more about what Muuto are doing, where would you point them to? Where can they get in touch?
I am active on LinkedIn, as I think we all are in the firm. So you can look us up on there. I'm also Tommo, Tommo, at Muuto, Muuto.co.uk. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Amazing, Tom. Well, thank you for this. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it. And yes, we will see how long this podcast stands the test of time in a good way. We might need to come back in 3 months to completely re-record. And I am going to find out that podcast on Joe Rogan and Steve Jobs, because it might be that our next one of these, Tommo, is our AI avatars. And that would be a fascinating thing. But thank you for this, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, Nick.
Today's episode is brought to you by Create Engage, the specialist digital marketing agency for the disruptive management consultancy. Now, for long-time listeners, you will probably already know who we are. You may have even heard one of our ads on a previous episode of this podcast. But for those of you who don't, here is a short introduction. At Create Engage, we help you create an effective marketing strategy for your consultancy, a strategy that will resonate with your target clients. And then we support you by delivering the campaigns you need to turn that strategy into a reality, helping you to build your brand, raise your profile with your prospective clients, and ultimately generate return on investment from your marketing activity. Now, I could tell you about many of the great clients that we work with and the results we've delivered for them. But instead, I'm going to do something much more powerful, and something that I would recommend you do for your own marketing. I'm going to let our clients do the talking for us. If you are currently thinking about marketing for your consultancy, you're going to want to listen to this.
Create Engage started the process for us. They managed it end to end. They came up with some really creative ideas, and we were really happy with the work that they did, which meant that we could just focus on running the business. Not only did we start conversations with clients that we hadn't spoken to before, but also there was tangible return on investment by some work that we were given.
They've helped right from the initial shaping of the idea through to helping us work out what our end goal was. They've supported us with the visual identity and our positioning of the brand.
We've had an immediate expansion of our network and have initiated a raft of new conversations with owners, CEOs in target client organisations, and has led to us winning new projects already.
One of the greatest compliments, I guess, is that one of our competitors even said that they really like what we're doing with marketing. They wish they could be doing something as good.
So from our perspective, we couldn't recommend Create Engage any more than this.
I would certainly recommend Create Engage if you're a consulting firm. They really understand consultancies and the sort of challenges we face. And, I don't think you're going to get much better marketing anywhere else.
So I wouldn't hesitate to recommend Create Engage. They did a really good job for us.
So if you're looking for an agency that can help you achieve the results that our clients just described, then head to our website, createengage.co.uk, where you can find out more about how we support consulting firms like you. You can download our latest ebook and you can get in touch to talk about how we can help you take your consultancy to the next level through digital marketing. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Climbing Consulting. If you have any guest recommendations, comments, ideas, thoughts on how I can make this show better for you, just drop me an email. It's nick@createengage.co.uk, and I really look forward to hearing from you.